Hello, everyone, and welcome to Welcome to Report Podcast, episode 171. Benjamin Yoder here today. Talk to you about video games, and in terms of stuff I'm playing, I don't really have a lot new to talk about. I'm recording this on a Saturday night, so I'm hot off the Jet Girls online ranked racing scene. so yeah, and I did pretty well this week actually. I changed my jet machine a little bit and really gave a focus to this thing where basically when you're drifting, you can get some additional boost added to your boost gauge. And so I equipped a bunch of stuff that kind of enhanced that part of my jet machine. So it really gave me the ability to kind of pace out my boosts, and then at the end of a boost kind of slide into a turn or something like that, or even start sliding across a straightaway to get just enough boost back in my system that I could boost once again. So it really made it so I could kind of consistently keep a pretty fast pace, and there is a key to the timing on that, because if you are boosting, you can't gain more boost meter back for your jet machine. So that kind of became the strategy I had online, and it seemed to work out pretty well actually. It gave me a lot more, having the ability to kind of drift and increase my boost gauge by quite a bit, gave me a lot more freedom in my resources, I feel like. So it made it so if I wanted to use my weapon specials using my boost meter, it wasn't nearly as punishing as if I was just doing a normal jet machine setup where I was just kind of boosting when I slowly built up that meter, either through just racing normally or doing the little boost rings and things like that. So making a machine that was kind of aimed towards gaining boost, I think was a real benefit. But otherwise though, my experience from last week is pretty much the same experience I had this week. The one challenge being, and I think this is the problem with every racing game, is that if you get to the point where you're in front of everybody, the race could become a little boring, especially in a game like Mario Kart or a Mario Kart style racer where you have the ability to kind of attack each other. Once you get past that first lap, if you start putting distance between you and the other opponents, you kind of just end up by yourself up in front. And I think that kind of kills a little of the excitement a little bit. So I'm hoping that, I think I was kind of fortunate that I stumbled across my current build for the jet machine. And I'm hoping, the people who are also playing on PS4 will begin to kind of build out their jet machines in some unique ways, and hopefully I can learn more about how that game should work. I think I mentioned last week maybe, but the Japanese player base seemed to be kind of focused on not drifting at all, actually, just kind of boosting around corners and trying to keep as tight as on the wall as possible. So that could be an interesting strategy. I might give that a shot next week and just do a machine that's very much focused on handling around those tight corners and just keeping that in place. But my biggest concern would be actually keeping up the boost kind of thing. But yeah, I actually joined a second Jet Girls Discord group now that I mention it, and it is a PC focused Discord group. So I don't really have a lot of my own. I'm not going to get a lot out of that group, unfortunately. There are PS4 players in there, and they do seem to organize from time to time, but it seems very small for that group. So, but the Japanese player base, or a couple of the Japanese players, ended up in that Discord group, so they've been kind of interacting with the Western fans a little bit, which is kind of interesting to see, them posting their videos from January, and surprisingly be able to speak enough English that they've been able to, kind of communicate kind of what they're doing in the game, and talk a little about some of the bugs that are kind of frustrating. There's some weird stuff with using your special and then also using your boost and then also using your weapon that can cause some things to cancel out, and then you just kind of lose your boost meter even though nothing really happened or something like that. And so there's some weird bugs like that in the game, and unfortunately it sounds like it's been present for the entire time the game's out in Japan, and they just haven't ever fixed it. Again, I don't think they're really gonna patch Jet Girls, but hey, if they do, cool. Then I've also just been playing some more Rainbow Six Vegas still. Nothing really new there, and I don't really know if I'm going to talk about this game, that much more. I think it's pretty typical squad-based shooter kind of thing. Well, if you want to call it squad-based, you can play a single player, but, just kind of, I don't know. It's a shooter. fun shooter that has like a preciousness to your life. It's pretty quick time to kill. So you have to be careful about, taking in too many shots. You can take 1 or 2 shots. I did go ahead and actually armor up my character a little bit to make it a little bit more easier to be, not just get one-shotted by a guy with like a Desert Eagle or something. But I've been enjoying it overall. There's just not a lot to say about it. It's a shooter, an early shooter with early cover system based shooter. So it does play a little chunky, but I don't really think we'll do too much on that. And then I'm still just playing the last story, so just getting pushing through that game at this time. But yeah, other than that, I haven't really done that much new. I mean, I guess I beat Jet Girl. I didn't do that by last week, but I don't really have anything to add about that other than the story was kind of not great. But yeah, I'll have a kind of a complete video for Jet Girls at some point. I'm not going to do like a full review of it. I don't think there's enough for me to say about that game to make it a full review. But I'll probably do something that is in the current format of what the quick looks have been looking at quick plays, have been looking like. And I think I might end up renaming those quick plays after some more thought about it. The quick play format was very much based off quick looks from Giant Bomb, which are a very different thing, and it feels a little weird and vague putting the current videos under the quick play label, and I had thought that I was going to be just kind of settle with that, but I think I might change it to be something more review like still, but just not a scripted review. But I think I do want to kind of like categorize it as a review, because these games I'm talking about, I have played through them and I have kind of like complete thoughts on them. It's not like I'm just checking in while I'm halfway through the game or something like that, right? So yeah, I'll look into that and see what's best. I would like to make a decision about that this weekend, honestly, but we'll see. Otherwise, though, I'll have something on Jet Girls at some point. Probably not this next week, but maybe the week afterwards, we'll have it. This podcast this week is largely going to be focused on news. There's a lot of release date information that came out, and I'll probably talk a little bit about the games themselves as well. And there's also a few game reveals as well that were kind of relevant to me. I'm a Nintendo fan, so Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, that was announced, and it's basically a new Muso-style Zelda game. I don't know if you would call it a Zelda game per se, but Muso-style game in the Zelda franchise, I guess you could say. And I never picked up the original Hyrule Warriors, and I think at this time I probably would still be most likely to pick up the original Hyrule Warriors, at least if we're talking about the characters that are in that game. This one's very much based off of Breath of the Wild. It's actually canonically based in Breath of the Wild as well. Like, the story is actually a part of that timeline there, it seems like. And it seems very based on a lot of the events that happened, like, I think it's like 100 years before the events of Breath of the Wild kind of thing. So that's really cool. And I'll say it's a great looking game. It looks, well, let me take that back. It's a great looking Muso game. It looks as good as Breath of the Wild does in terms of visual style. That was what I was most impressed by, just the fact that it looked so close to Breath of the Wild. I'm assuming it's using a lot of the same assets and look, but I feel like Muso games always kind of look a little off compared to their source material. But, maybe I could be wrong about that. I have not played a lot of Muso games. But yeah, it looked pretty neat. I think the big thing that would really sell me on this game is just having a game with a different structure. I think that's what really interested me in Dragon Quest Heroes 2, is that structure of that game felt very more RPG-like. It actually felt more like Dragon Quest Swords to me than anything. With like, it's kind of like, kind of an overworld you're exploring, but it is kind of limited in a lot of ways, but that's perfectly fine. But in the case of Hyrule Warriors so far, nothing's really jumped out at me. A lot of the areas that you're in seems to be kind of closed off in like a battlefield kind of space. Obviously Breath of the Wild is more about being an open world thing. I know Dynasty Warriors has done open world before. I think it did not particularly do it well, so I'd be curious to see if they were to try that again in this case, and if they are working with Nintendo, getting a little more guidance on that. But we'll see. I don't get the impression that's going to be what it is, but they didn't show a ton of gameplay in that initial trailer. So that's actually coming out pretty soon. It's like November 20th. So that's, maybe not like the game that everybody would want at the end of this year, but I think it's a good little bit of something. I think this whole holiday season for Nintendo Switch owners is going to be, little bits of fun little Nintendo things and not much more. So yeah. And they said they're going to have a new Breath of the Wild 2 update. Let me roll that back. They said at the end of the trailer, next update 926. I assume that's in relation to Breath of the Wild 2, but I don't know for sure. Like, I'm not a huge Breath of the Wild fan, if you don't know that. I have a video about it, and there's a lot of things that game just kind of fails to do, in my opinion, even for what it's trying to do with its open world aspect. And then also, how I view it as a Zelda game. I kind of think it does bad on both of those fronts, but there are some interesting things in between that I think make it interesting as a game in terms of like how the world reacts to Link and what he's doing in there and things like that. I think the world Link very much feels like a part of that world, versus something like, let's say, Xenoblade Chronicles X, where you as the character can't really interact with that world in any way. Just think about like other Nintendo open world games, I guess. So I think Breath of the Wild is like has that strength, and so with Breath of the Wild 2, at this point, I don't really have a lot of expectations. It's going to be anything more than that I already don't like about that game, to be honest. But I am curious to see what it turns out to be, and I think I'm definitely willing to give it a look whenever they show it off again, and try to see if it's something that I'm willing to spend some time on. I was probably a fairly big Zelda fan leading up to Breath of the Wild, and while Breath of the Wild didn't really do it for me, I'm curious to see if they are able to, I don't know if course correct is the right word, because I think some people would say, look how successful Breath of the Wild is, and that is peak what that game should be at this point. I think the game reviewed pretty well, despite me saying, just now saying that I did not like it on either front of what it tried to do. But I think it would be interesting to see if they're able to improve what I found to be problematic with that first game, and if they were to refocus the game. I think they really need to scale that game down in terms of scope, honestly, but that's not quite what people want. But one thing it also made me think about was just like, I'm surprised I'm willing, at this point I'm very open to giving Zelda another chance, whether that's in the Breath of the Wild style or something different, where there is also an announcement that there's going to be some Nier info coming up soon, I assume in relation to that Nier remaster or whatever. And oh man, I could not muster the energy to be excited for a new Nier thing. Like the reason why these two are connected is because I really like Zelda, the series, and I also really like the original Nier, and both of those games kind of just rained on my parade on terms of like what I liked about those games, and made me feel like I'm like, maybe I'm not a fan of this series anymore. But in the case of the Breath of the Wild, I seem very open to like seeing more of it in terms of at least Breath of the Wild 2, but hopefully whatever comes next, that it will be something different. With Nier, I don't know if I don't know. I don't have a lot of hope for Nier at this point. Anyways, let's get off the topic of Nier. There's also a new Pocky and Rocky that got announced. It's coming sometime next year. There was a trailer, and it looks very much like Pocky and Rocky, which is basically, if you don't know, it's like this top-down kind of, I don't know if you call it kind of like shooter kind of thing. You're like this little characters that run around, and you throw these little chakrams in front of you, and you can like swing your little stick and hit things with that. It's kind of like an arcadey like top-down action game, I guess you could say, in some ways. It reminds me more of like a shooter than it is like anything else. But yeah, and that trailer looks very much like what that series normally looks like. But I liked Pocky and Rocky as a kid, and I haven't really had a chance to go back and revisit it. I know there's that other like Pocky and Rocky spin-off series. I think the European name was like Snow Princess Sayuki or something like that. I forget what the US name was for it, or maybe that was the US name. I can't remember. But yeah, I'm curious to see, well, I don't know if I'm curious to see anything with that. It's just, it looks pretty much like Pocky and Rocky. So maybe it's where I kind of dip my toes back in. I'm not quite sure where the best starting point for that is. And I don't know if those games are readily available anywhere other than emulation, obviously. But I don't have like a Super Nintendo, and I think the original Pocky and Rocky is a Super Nintendo game. So, or the original one that I'm thinking of. I actually don't know. That might be Pocky and Rocky 2, actually. But thinking of like series that I can't really figure out where to jump in on, one game I think I am going to jump in on at this point finally is Onechambara Bikini Zombie Slayer Origins. Well, I think it's just Onechambara Origins, which is a remake of the original Onechambara. And this was announced a while ago. I've talked about it on the podcast before. I think it's just like a really nice looking game, like a really like aesthetically looks very pleasing. And also I think because of the more, stringent guidelines of Sony at this point when it comes to, character clothing and things like that for females specifically, They have kind of changed it so the outfit types in that game are usually more of different outfits rather than like, hey, you want to wear a banana and 2 strawberries over your privates, and calling that an outfit kind of thing. So it looks appealing to me in terms of as a game. I'm gonna guess like gameplay wise, it's probably not gonna be very special. Also, I liked Schoolgirl Zombie Hunters, despite that being just like a janky third person shooter. So I kind of feel like I should give Onijambara a shot, and this seems like a good spot to start with, at least in terms of. Seems like it plays well. It's got a nice look to it. And, when it comes to the previous games, nothing about those old games seem to particularly stand out other than they're just, on PS2, on their previous platforms, things like that. So I might check that out. And that got a release date announced for October 14th. So I may get that near launch, actually. It seemed like Onijambara Z2 was like a 6 to 8 hour game. So that seems very, very doable on my part. And I think Schoolgirl Zombie Hunters was also very, very short overall. I don't think this has any kind of multiplayer in it, unlike Schoolgirl Zombie Hunters, but I think I'll pick it up and check it out. I've been wanting to check out that series for a while now, and this seems like, A, it's a remake of the original game, B, it's got a nice look to it, C, it's got some nice clothes in it too, and nice clothes, the ability to choose between different nice clothes is a weirdly appealing thing for me in a lot of games. That's one thing I can say about Jet Girls. I did try to mess with like the clothing options in Jet Girls, and there's just not a lot there. I mean, Peach Beach Splash had the same problem to some extent, but there's definitely significantly more swimsuits in this game, or like tied off tops kind of thing. More of summery, beachy kind of things rather than actual outfits. Where at least in like Senran Kagura Peach Beach Splash, you had all the character outfits of all the characters in Senran Kagura. So yeah, this game doesn't have as much as that. So anyways, back off Jet Girls. Speaking of more hack and slash stuff, this is something I was not aware. Apparently, No More Heroes 3 was scheduled to come out in 2020. I had no idea. So, I was just like, oh, okay, when they announced that they were pushing it to 2021. I don't think we've seen, real gameplay of that game yet. So if you don't remember, for next, what was it called? New Game Plus Expo, I think is what it's called. That E3 time period showcase that was done with a lot of Japanese developers. It's actually a very appealing showcase for me. I hope they keep doing that, where it's just a bunch of smaller Japanese developers came together to do an hour-long presentation. And No More Heroes 3 was in that presentation technically, but Suda51 was just sitting over the footage. So you could see the gameplay in the background, but he was green screened in over the center of the screen. So it's technically we've seen No More Heroes 3, but they haven't really showed any real gameplay that we could take a look at, see what's going on mechanically with that game or things like that. So I'm not too surprised it's not coming out this year, but at the same time we haven't really seen anything from it, is the thing. So yeah, I'll be curious to see when we first start seeing some No More Heroes 3 stuff. I mean, Tokyo Game Show stuff's coming up here soon, right? It's September. It's Tokyo Game Show time. I actually don't know the days of Tokyo Game Show. I think it's one of the stream actually mentioned that Tokyo Game Show was coming up and was like, are you going to watch it? And I'm like, Tokyo Game Show is a lot of shows at once. It's I feel like whenever you watch Tokyo Game Show, there's 12 streams going on. And then 3 of them are people talking on stage. 3 of them are people looking at mobile games. And then 3 of them are panels of people just sitting there, looking at screenshots of Phantasy Star Online 2 costumes or something. I don't know. Tokyo Game Show live broadcasting is kind of its own weird thing, I feel like. Well, I guess it's kind of a weird, it's not really weird. It's just that's the Japanese streaming style. And then to get it all shoved into one show where you're seeing all of those different styles at once is kind of a strange thing. But, I'm definitely looking forward to news coming out of Tokyo Game Show, given that I mostly care about Japanese video games. So a couple of last 2 news stories for things that I specifically one of them I'm kind of interested in picking up. The other one I have kind of already dipped my toes into. The first one is the Panzer Dragoon remake that came out for Nintendo Switch. Is getting released on PS4 and PC. I never ended up picking the Switch version, unfortunately. I was planning on buying the physical from Limited Run Games, but I missed the ordering period for the physical copies. So I'm hoping that with the PS4 version, there will be another run for a physical PS4 version, and that will be my chance to get this game on a disc. And maybe with all the DLC on the disc too, because I think they actually put out some downloadable content for the Switch version, because I think it was something to do with the soundtrack. I think there's like a remix soundtrack, and then they added the original soundtrack back in later, but it was like via patch. I could be wrong about that, but that sounds right in my brain. Anyways, but yeah, I would be like, if they sell the PS4 version as a physical copy, I would definitely be willing to buy that. Try to buy that again. Again, I'm not a huge Panzer Dragoon 1 fan, to be honest with you. It's a game that never really... The problem was that I played Panzer Dragoon Orta first, like the third game in the series, and that game has a lot going on. Panzer Dragoon 1 does not have a lot going on. So I just don't really love it that much, to be honest with you. But I do really appreciate, Sega giving somebody, their property to work on a Saturn thing, even though it's not a port, it's a remake. I think that's pretty cool. And I hope, Sega spends more time looking at their Saturn library, looking at what they can do with Panzer Dragoon and things like that. I would love to see Burning Rangers come back in some affordable sense. That would be great. So, yeah. And the last story here is a game I already have, but I do think it's worth mentioning because it is a game close to my heart. Rodea the Sky Soldier. It's being delisted from the Wii U and 3DS eShop, unfortunately. So, rest in peace, Rodea the Sky Soldier. There are plenty of physical copies of the Wii U and 3DS one. And the Wii U one, if you get it new, comes with the Wii game too. So you should definitely do that. I did see a lot of people being like, good riddance to this because of the Wii U version of the game. Hey man, I like the Wii U version of Rodea the Sky Soldier. It's pretty alright. It's my favorite version of that game. I think the 3DS version is basically the same. So you know what's a smart decision? Ben, why don't you buy the 3DS version? Because NES America had them on clearance on their website. So they're selling them for $5. I was like, cool. And then I had to pay $5 shipping. So it's like, but $10. That's fine. The one thing I didn't check was whether it comes with the soundtrack or not, because the 3DS version came bundled with the soundtrack. So I did pick that up. So I might give that a look at some point. That's a short game overall, but as far as I understand, the 3DS version is just the Wii U version, but it looks worse. So yeah. I don't know that for sure, though. But then I'll have the complete trilogy of Rodea the Sky Soldier. I will be prepared at any moment to talk about the benefits of each version of Rodea the Sky Soldier. So yeah, and that's pretty much it for game news stuff. There is some hardware talk going around right now. I believe Sony has announced that they're going to be... I don't have the article here. I think it's just something Anthony mentioned to me. So if Anthony, if you're wrong, you're spreading false information on my podcast. But it sounds like there's going to be a PlayStation event on the 16th. Talk about PlayStation 5, probably pricing and release date maybe. So that may be coming up, but I did not actually confirm that. So don't take my word on that. But the reason why this probably kind of came up was the fact that the Xbox Series S price leaked. The Xbox Series S, if you don't know, is basically a slimmer, cheaper version of the Xbox Series X, Microsoft's next-gen platform. And while I don't think they've officially announced the Xbox Series X price or anything like that, the general leak seemed to be pointing towards the Series X being $500, so $499 US. And so basically the Series S is going to be $299 US, and it will have like less power in terms of it's not able to do 4K graphic or 4K resolution. It's also a discless console as well. And apparently it's going to not support like any kind of Xbox One X enhancements. So if you were playing like Xbox One X, enhanced games and you trade in your Xbox One X up to a Series S, you will be losing something on some of those games that had those enhancements. The only thing I can think off the top of my head is I think like Red Dead Redemption 2 had like HDR on the Xbox One X version, in addition to like being in 4K. So I think there were some benefits that were like exclusive to that platform that it sounds like you'll be losing if you go to a Series S. But The big thing is, and I think the big thing, negative wise, is that it's like a 512 gigabyte hard drive or solid state drive, I guess I should say. I don't really know technically what the memory is. Apparently, like it's a solid state drive, but it's like some other special memory that's separate from like a typical solid state drive that I don't know about. Microsoft's selling its own proprietary memory cards for it and everything. But 512 gigabytes. At least when we look at modern game sizes that are on our current platforms, is not a great amount of space, to be honest. Admittedly, this memory is significantly more expensive, it sounds like, versus like a hard drive. So yeah, it's definitely questionable. I'll be curious to see how much those individual memory sticks end up costing that you can plug into the Xbox. But $299 is a great price. That is like year 2, year 3 pricing. Like we just did our like I don't think these current consoles got down to $299 until they released like the Pro, right? Like the PS4 Pro and stuff like that, and the Xbox One S. I could be wrong about that, but that just seems very consumer level pricing, very accessible kind of thing. And you also have the fact that you can, use your current Xbox to play the games that at least Microsoft will be releasing on the later platform as well. So I think that's a really, really smart, place to position a console at launch. Are those platforms going to last nearly as long as the Xbox Series X in terms of, how relevant they are? Is it going to be a situation where by the end of the console generation, with like the PS4 and Xbox One, most third-party games seem to not aim for that platform and like, whatever, if this game runs at 14 frames per second in some scenes, cool. What if your PS4 sounded like a jet engine and was super, super hot, dude? We don't care. We're God of War. We're speccing to PS4 Pro. Actually, I think most first-party stuff is generally pretty safe, other than maybe the heat aspect. I feel like I hear people talk about the PS4 fans quite a bit. But yeah, I think it's a really great place to position a more budget console, and it sounds like they're cutting in places that probably matter. Things like the resolution probably is not going to matter to somebody who's looking for a budget price console. It's a very tempting price. The biggest issue with me is that I am into physical game collecting, growing a shrinking minority, I guess I should say. In terms of people who are looking for games on a disc. So getting a discless version of a game or discless version of a console is unfortunately not super helpful to me. I'd imagine the disc drive wouldn't cost that much, but hey, I'm guessing to get that price down to $299, they're probably cutting corners here and there. And wouldn't be surprised if they're like, hey, also a part of us being able to sell this low is the fact that we don't have to pay, we're going to be getting more money on the software side when you purchase games digitally than if you were to go out and buy a disc kind of thing. So yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. I think that's just a really smart move, and I'll be really curious to see how it plays out. I think this console generation with Microsoft, doing what they're doing with Xbox specifically, is a really fascinating strategy that I don't know if anybody really knows if it's going to work yet. And I'm definitely very curious to see how it turns out. I'm very glad Microsoft's doing what they're doing with the platform. And if that was a $299 disc console, there was probably a higher chance that I'd be almost willing to go ahead and just pick that up near launch. Honestly, that is a pretty decent price. And as somebody who has maybe been a little miffed at some of the decisions Sony makes from time to time this console generation, and also just like very happy with the proactive approach that Microsoft's been taking with like things like backwards compatibility, cross-platform play, and things like that. I definitely would be more interested in picking up an Xbox if the software was there. Unfortunately, I don't think the games I want are going to end up on Xbox very often. So yeah. And then the last bit of hardware news was basically there's yet another report about a upgraded Switch. Basically, it sounds like there were some initial reports about there being some kind of upgraded Switch with more power being pushed out, and then there's some follow-up reports that basically the developers of Switch games were told to start making their games 4K ready. So that will be I'll be curious to see what that ends up being from a Switch perspective in terms of what what kind of a platform that looks like in terms of if that's going to be a console-based Switch, or if they're also still looking to do a portable one, but are just going to be, looking to provide something that might be more bulky or something like that. I did see there was someone who had dug up some patents for Joy-Cons that were standalone and didn't connect into a Nintendo Switch. So that could be definitely a sign of a direction like that. I would definitely be happy to see some Joy-Cons that are not limited by the portable nature of the Switch, because I love the concept of the Joy-Cons, but unfortunately, they're not very ergonomic. so I don't love holding them, unfortunately. That, and they have a lot of other issues too, but maybe they'll fix them. Probably not, though. The other thing I haven't really thought about was, I'm definitely somebody who is okay trading up consoles. The DS era, I stuck with the big old fat DS the entire lifespan, and that DS served me well, and it eventually died. But it got me through the entire DS generation. And 3DS, I definitely traded up there because I was pretty progressively, like, I was not happy with the 3DS hardware and kind of had to continue to trade up to try to escape my problems with the 3DS hardware, and I don't think I ever did fully. Admittedly, part of that stuff was also I had a 3DS curse where every time I got a new 3DS, it seemed like within 3 months I dropped it on a driveway and something was wrong with the console at that point. I don't know why that continued to happen. So yeah, I did trade up a bit for that. And I'm definitely not opposed to trading my Switch in to get something that's a bit more powerful, especially a console-only experience. I don't really use my Switch portably all that often. I definitely use it from time to time when traveling, but the reality is that I have a 3DS, I have a PSP. I'm perfectly fine with the console-only solution for the Nintendo Switch at this point, and if I ever wanted to get something portable, I don't think it would be that much of a stretch for me to get a cheap, Switch portably if it ever became a real issue. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I need to see what they're doing with the platform first and foremost. The big weird thing that I could think of, though, is just I don't really know. The only company I really know about trading in for is like GameStop. I guess like maybe mom and pop game shops as well. You could do like a trade up as well there too. But I'm curious to see, if GameStop survives, for how long, and then if not for the 4K Switch, kind of where would be the best place to go for me to do that kind of trade in. I don't know if any other retailers really offer that kind of stuff, but yeah. Anyways, those are all the words out of my mouth this week. Thank you for coming. OneControlReport.com is the website. If you didn't see, last week I had a Halo 3 ODST quick play that went up. So go check that out. It may be renamed at this point if I decide to change the name of what these more recent quick plays have been, but just look up Halo 3 ODST on my website or on, my YouTube, and you'll find it. I don't have a lot of Halo videos, so it's going to be the one video that shows up probably. And then also, I have this week a Tiny Bullets video going up. So if you didn't watch the Tiny Bullets stream or just want kind of some summarization of my feelings about Tiny Bullets for the PlayStation 1, I went ahead and did a video for that. So you can go ahead and check that out. That'll be going up on Wednesday. And then the week after that, I will probably have something related to Jet Girls up. But if not, the Shining Resonance video will be up after that. And then hopefully I'll be having the Wizard of Oz Beyond the Yellow Brick Road video coming up at some point. I have not started the video editing process, but I think at this point, if I really wanted to, I probably could go ahead and start editing a video for that without too much trouble. So I may begin that process even though I haven't rebeaten the game. I don't really have to rebeat the game, but I'm so close to the end, I kind of feel like it might as well kind of thing. Especially since it's been a nice refresher to remind me about that game. Although I have completed the script, have not looked at it yet since then. So that's what's up. If you haven't watched the Last Remnant streams, or not Last Remnant, I keep saying the Last Remnant, Last Rebellion stream is up on the website, or has been going up on the website every week. I stream every week on Twitch and YouTube at 7 p.m. Pacific time on Thursdays. I'd say we have about 2 streams left for the last rebellion, so we're getting pretty close there. I'm a little lost right now, so hopefully I'm not lost too much longer. I think I'm progressing. I don't know is the thing. I'm like going to new areas, but no cutscenes are triggering. So I'm like, am I just walking where I'm not supposed to be, or am I actually doing this correctly? So I don't know. If we get stuck for a long time next stream, I might just look up a game facts guide and see if I can figure out where I'm going, and do that. Anyways, that's it for this week. Thanks for coming, and I hope you have a great week. Bye.